welcome to a unscheduled lunch. We would normally have this as a leading edge event in the evening. So as the little message we sent out said to you, this is we decided, because of Nickel Industries, we've decided to put this as a lunch event, and we do love our lunch events. And getting close to Christmas, one more to go, and wonderful to see such a big turnout, and warm welcome to a big group of Nickel Industries who are with us too. Well, what a resounding 24 hours we've had on the world stage. It's I think we're all shaking our heads. It's going to have resounding implications to lots of things around us, and a lot of people are on notice about the importance of producing things in the world, and producing things in the world is our job. As miners, it's our duty to our nation and to our industry, to our shareholders and to our families, and I think we can take considerable courage from that international event and the messages that will percolate through to our country. It's quite an astonishing event. I'm sure you all feel the same way. Oh, I was talking about the US election. Who'd have thought? So anyway, look, on behalf of Trevor Sykes, our patron, his beautiful bride Daya is still unwell. Trevor hasn't been able to attend for quite some time. He's still our patron and our national treasure, so I always introduce on behalf of him as well. And I also would like to open by thanking our sponsors. As you know, you do not pay membership to be here as Sydney Mining Club members, and instead it's through the generous sponsorship of our sponsors. I always like to read them all out for their own recognition. From this end, we've got AMEC, Veritas, TEAS, Taurus, RAAS, the Research as a Service, New South Wales Minerals Council, and you all know Steve Galilee co-chairs. I'll talk a little bit more about chairing. AME Group, major sponsors, GBA Capital and BDA. So oh look, Norm, I think we've got a new sponsor there by the look of it. Is that Nickel Industries? There you go. That was a pretty subtle hint, wasn't it? Kingsgate, Ioneer, Bernie Rowe is here today, and I'll just stop for a quick little message about Bernie Rowe. Bernie Rowe's Ioneer has been granted fully permitted federal permit for the opening of the Rhyolite Ridge, construction of the Rhyolite Ridge lithium and boron project in Nevada, and Bernie's been, he's one of us, he's from Sydney, and he's driven that discovery. Happy shareholder. Lucky I bought back in at doubled down at 14 cents, Bernie. It's been, thank you. But it is a great story, mate. It's a great pride that we have you now on our register of sponsors here. So, yeah, great admiration. Fender Geophysics, Andrew Sloot is another great Sydney player. CRU, CRE Insurance, great fellas. Do a lot of insurance work around the mining industry, and APM Graphics. So, yeah, look, why don't we just stop and put our hands together for our sponsors. Give them your thanks in person, and better still, give them your business. They make the wheels, they make this whole place go round year in, year out. I've got a special thanks to our sponsors too. I don't know if you remember, about 2 years ago, there was a very unfortunate story that appeared on the ABC where the Sydney Mining Club, and me in particular, was accused by the ABC of channeling election funds from Hancock prospecting to the Liberal Party. I couldn't think of anything worse that I could possibly ever want to do. But this was damaging, and it's been a very difficult time for me personally because I've had to weather this out. And the Australian Electoral Commission has now investigated the matter. I put out a message at the time to all of the sponsors and said what had happened and explained the efforts that we'd made, lodging returns and trying to find out what the right thing was to do, just in case it was seen that the Hancock's sponsorship of the mining club and the membership of the Australian Business Network that it enabled was seen that way. And I'm very pleased to say that I have in my hand right now a draft finding from the Australian Electoral Commission, which says that, which finds that there was no wrongdoing on the part of the Sydney Mining Club, of the Liberal Party, or of Hancock Prospecting. So it was the environment writer from the ABC who ambushed us. Michael Slezak is his name. Give him my regards if you see him. He is the loser on this occasion, and I plan to offer as much pain to the ABC in return for what it's done to me over that matter. But thank you especially to all of those sponsors who trusted my word over the word of that terrible story that was put up and all the innuendo and slur that was given to me. He wasn't the political writer, he wasn't the business writer, he was the environment writer. So obviously hoping to throw mud at some miners and advance his career in that manner. Well, that's played out pretty badly for him. So anyway, great relief and good to know that the AEC, heart of our democracy, is a fair organisation and it takes the time to dissect such matters, and they have actually asked me to review this report before they publish it. So it's a very considerate approach. Thank you. That feels even just a little bit better. Thank you very much. So chairing, we now have a look forward to a fresh year ahead. As you've seen through this year, we've now stabilised the chairing and the arrangements of the Sydney Mining Club once more. We had some changes. Steve Galilee, our dear mate, Executive Director of the New South Wales Minerals Council, you know, up here, Steve will be chairing. Will Jeffries, who is also does a lot of, you've seen Will, and he's very a pro-mining activist. He's not an activist, but a journalist is probably a better word. And he actually writes political and current affairs for Ben Fordham on 2GB, which is listened to about 6 or 7 times the listenership of the ABC in the morning. And so you'll see there's more current affairs, and we'll be bringing that forward. So there'll be a rotation between Steve and myself and Will, and we're very happy to be working together and lining up. And Will's also been doing the bookings for the year ahead. If you want to put a name forward, company you think should be in there, you want to check whether they're worth doing, that's Will with his hand. Just stick it up again, mate. Looks like Henry Lawson over here, bloke with a moustache. Just mention it to Will, and he'll see if it can be scheduled in the coming year. Nickel. Mark Purcell, one of the guys I work with at my company, brought me up to speed on what had happened in the backdrop to the nickel industry story, and I was quite staggered to having built a nickel company myself once, to learn about this amazing nickel short that went on by the owner, the Chinese tycoon who owns whose name is Zhang Guangda, and he's the owner of Tsingshan. An incredible story about how he shorted the market, drove the price up, and then couldn't deliver on nickel. And then the other rest of the story is that because of the Chinese had actually purchased the London Metal Exchange, and I was unaware of this connection, that they actually suspended trade of nickel in his favour. and they cancelled $12 billion worth of nickel trades at the height of that nickel spike. That has shaken out right across the nickel industry. I'm sure you're aware of that. We're in a completely different league now, and I think the exciting thing about our story today and the journey that Norm Seckold and Justin Werner have been on is that it's been bloody tough during some sessions of this development over the last 15 or so years. As with all our great developers and promoters, courage and persistence is the thing that some days you don't know which one you're being. Some days you just think you're being persistent. Other days you have to be courageous. I think Justin was telling me this morning that when I spoke to a broker early in the development of the company, he took one look at it and he said, "This has got more red flags than Tiananmen Square." And yet these guys have operated and come through, and I think it's a fabulous story, and it is the story that we've moved to a lunch today. And I'd like to, Justin, if you'd like to come up here and join me, mate, if you're ready to go. We do have a video to start with, that nice big long video. There's a few minutes left for you to speak after this video, Justin. But it's a great video. But please, let's start just by welcoming Justin Werner, and you can just stand here and look the part, and while we watch the video, and then take over. And great to have you here, mate.
Thanks, George.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Nickel Industries is the world's largest listed, diversified, pure-play nickel producer, operating an integrated portfolio of world-class mining and low-cost nickel processing assets in Indonesia. Safety for all is the core of our operating philosophy, and we are proud to have worked over 16.7 million man-hours lost time injury-free for 2023, an industry-leading achievement. The company is now Australia's largest foreign investor in Indonesia, investing over $3 billion in support of the Indonesian government's vision to grow its domestic nickel mining and refining capacity into a world-class EV and battery production hub. Having established ourselves as a globally significant producer of nickel pig iron for the stainless steel industry, we are now rapidly transforming into the production of Class 1 and intermediary nickel products for the electric vehicle and battery supply chain. This transition commenced in 2023 with the company acquiring a 10% interest in the Huayu Nickel Cobalt HPAL project, one of the first Indonesian HPAL projects to be successfully built, commissioned and ramped up to 30% above nameplate capacity in under 2 years. This transition continues with our investment into the acquisition of a 55% stake in the Excelsior Nickel Cobalt HPAL, a third-generation HPAL with an annual capacity of approximately 72,000 tonnes of nickel metal per annum. The ENC project will benefit from leveraging the learnings and expertise of the team that built the HNC HPAL, and like all of the projects we have collaborated on with our partner and largest shareholder, Tsingshan, will come with a unique set of construction and performance guarantees that have underpinned Tsingshan's unrivaled track record for project delivery and execution. These guarantees include a CapEx guarantee, eliminating the risk of any cost overruns, a timeframe guarantee of no more than 24 months from October 2023, and a nameplate guarantee of 60,000 tonnes per annum of nickel metal. ENC will further benefit from a highly competitive fiscal regime through a 15-year corporate income tax holiday, with an additional 2 years at only an 11% tax rate. ENC will be the first HPAL project globally to produce 3 of the key Class 1 and intermediary nickel products, being mixed hydroxide precipitate, nickel sulfate and nickel cathode, at the lowest global cost and carbon intensity, with full traceability from mining to refining, with all being supplied a short distance by slurry pipeline from the company's 80% owned Hengjaya mine, and tailings then being returned to the mined out pits to be recontoured and revegetated, making this global best practice for tailings storage and management. Hengjaya mine is a world-class 5,983 hectare nickel laterite mine, less than 20 kilometres from our processing operations, with current resources of 3.6 million tonnes of contained nickel metal, making it one of the largest known nickel deposits globally. Our mine has been consecutively awarded the coveted Green Proper rating from the Indonesian Ministry of Environment and Forestry, one of only 2 nickel mines in Indonesia to receive this rating, along with the highest MSCI rating for any Indonesian mining and metals company, and 3rd percentile ranking on the S&P Global Sustainability Index. Hengjaya Mine is committed to comprehensive biodiversity and rehabilitation programs, which since 2019 has seen it remediate over 2,000 hectares of land by planting over 2 million trees that will provide a significant future income stream for the local communities. We have also received approval to establish a 197 hectare biodiversity area, where we have studied and identified areas of primary forest and endemic flora and fauna. This conservation area will be used to promote the protection of these species, as well as providing a protected area for education and to nurture and promote the growth of endemic flora and fauna. Nickel Industries has taken a leadership role in promoting responsible and sustainable mining and processing operations in Indonesia and is recognised as an ESG leader. Our core ESG pillars are focused on local community, employment, empowerment and development, achieved through a number of programs including education, health, waste management, women's empowerment and adoption of renewable and clean energy. We are pleased to welcome this year our first 10 local Indigenous University Scholarship recipients from the Central Sulawesi, North Maluku and West Papua provinces of Indonesia, who will pursue 4-year undergraduate degrees across the fields of engineering, accounting and law. The scholarship program, which will select 10 students annually, will provide full financial support with the aim of helping to identify and foster the next generation of leaders in the local mining industry. Nickel Industries was one of only 2 Indonesian mining companies invited to present at the prestigious COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai in 2023, where we announced our commitment to a 50% reduction in carbon by 2035 and net zero by 2050. These targets will be achieved through a carbon reduction roadmap with a number of initiatives already underway, including signing of an operational lease agreement to offtake power from Indonesia's largest solar project, a 250 megawatt peak plus 80 megawatt hour battery energy storage system, and the first successful trial and use of electric vehicle haul trucks in Indonesia at our Hengjaya mine. The HNC HPAL project already operates at a carbon intensity of less than 7 tonnes of carbon per tonne of nickel, making it one of the lowest carbon emitting operations globally, and uses innovative practices such as meeting 60% of its power requirements through the conversion of heat from its captive sulfuric acid plant into low-cost, low-carbon energy. These same innovative practices will be adopted and further refined at our ENC HPAL. Together with Tsingshan, our vision for our ENC HPAL is to be the global showpiece for low-carbon, sustainable nickel production, integrated with world's best living standards for our workers. It is envisaged that the greater ENC area will evolve into a green forest precinct living area, comprising apartments, villas, gymnasiums and sports fields, utilising clean electric power across all buildings and transportation fleets, including forklifts, excavators, commuter vehicles and trams for moving employees around the project. As the world moves towards decarbonisation, spearheaded by the electrification of passenger vehicles, NIC's objective is to become the world's preeminent diversified nickel company, with its operations and core values underpinned by an unwavering commitment to safety, sustainability and innovation.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to Julian and the kind invitation from the Sydney Mining Club to present the Nickel Industries story here today. And you'd be pleased to know that I'm a much better nickel miner than I am a audio voiceover artist or a corporate video producer. But hopefully that video gives you some sense of the scale of exactly the development that's occurred in Indonesia, literally just over the last 10 years, to the point where Indonesia now produces 55% of the world's global nickel output, and that's forecast to grow to 75% by the end of this decade. So it's been a rapid ascension. We've actually been there from the very beginning. So we've been in country in Indonesia for 15 years. So it's a story of perseverance and a bit of good luck along the way. So with that, I'll start the presentation. So just to introduce Nickel Industries, we are the largest listed pure diversified nickel producer. And really the keys to our business is integration across the mining and refining value chain, and product diversification across the nickel products that we produce. And that gives us access to a number of different segments of the nickel market. We have sort of two distinct business segments. Those are our mining operations, which are integrated with our processing facilities. And our processing facilities are a mixture of rotary kiln electric furnaces, which produce nickel pig iron and nickel matte, and high pressure acid leach, which currently produce MHP, and a new high pressure acid leach called ENC, which will start commissioning in the second half of next year. And that will increase or further expand our product offering from MHP, which we currently produce, to nickel sulfate and to nickel cathode. And that gives us access to three distinct key end markets, and those are electric vehicles, batteries, aerospace, and stainless steel. So you can see in that chart there the different types of ore that we have, limonite and saprolite, and then the different products that we're able to produce from those different ore types. Just to sort of set the scene in terms of the growth that I spoke about that's occurred in Indonesia, I mentioned 55% of global nickel production last year, forecast to be 75% of nickel production by the end of this decade. We like to think of Indonesia as what the Pilbara is to iron ore, or the Middle East is to oil and gas. There really is nowhere else globally that is as well endowed with nickel resources. Why has it taken so long for Indonesia to be developed? It's laterite ore bodies, or lateritic ore. Historically, it's been very tricky to produce, but significant advances and innovations have seen lateritic ore now being able to be processed at the lowest cost globally. If you look at what's happening in country in Indonesia in terms of the investment, up to US $50 billion of actual and committed investment all across the value chain, from mining to refining to batteries to actually the manufacture of low-cost EVs for the Asian market, and that's already being undertaken by Hyundai. But you look at those names, the initial wave of early investment was very much Chinese, but now you see names coming in there like Ford, like Hyundai, who I mentioned, LG Energy Solutions, Eramet. And so, we are now starting to see a lot of global players, ex-China, are now coming and investing in Indonesia because of obviously the abundance of ore, the fact that you can sit at the lowest quartile in terms of costs, and the fact that there's also some very attractive fiscal incentives for companies that invest in Indonesia. Just to give you a feel for how successful this policy's been, in 2013, Indonesia at the end of 2013 implemented a ban on the export of raw ore. So I guess it would be similar in Australia to saying, okay, we're not sending any more iron ore to China. We're going to bring all of the factories into Australia, and we're going to do all of the value adding in country. In 2013, about 600,000 tonnes of nickel was exported, predominantly or almost all of it as nickel in nickel ore. The value of those exports was about US $1 billion, and at the time that was a LME nickel price of around $25,000 a tonne. 2 years ago, Indonesia exported 600,000 tonnes of nickel, but in value-added products, stainless steel, nickel pig iron, MHP. The value of those exports was about 15 billion US. So you can see the massive value uplift that's been captured onshore. You look at the names that are investing, and then when I move to the next slide, you can see the impact of that investment. So the two industrial parks that we operate out of are two of the world's largest industrial parks. IMIP, which is the industrial park on the left, that is the world's largest fully vertically integrated stainless steel park. So it has production capacity of about 3.5 million tonnes per annum. But it's actually now grown to be more than just a nickel and stainless steel park. There's other operations within the park, such as ferrochrome, ferromanganese, a new lithium hydroxide plant, cathode plant, and there's 45 global partners that have invested in this industrial park. So it's really hard to capture the size and scale in the photos and even in the videos. But what's occurring in Indonesia is truly remarkable. IMIP, for example, has over 100,000 employees, and 97% of those are local Indonesians. IWIP, which is sort of a replica, but not at the same scale yet, is also close to 100,000 employees. We're very proud of our safety and ESG record in Indonesia. We're considered leaders in ESG and safety. We have the highest MSCI ESG rating of any metals and mining company in Indonesia. We also, our S&P score has improved considerably from 7 in 2021 to a recent score of 37 in 2024. And the actual global mining average is around 29, so actually above the average for global metal and miners. In terms of safety, in 2023, we worked 13.7 million man-hours LTI free, and our TRIFR and LTIFR are significantly below the world steel average. The green proper rating in the middle there is one of our proudest achievements. This is a rating that's given by the Indonesian Environmental and Forestry Department. We're one of only 2 companies to have received a green rating, and we're on track this year for our 3rd consecutive rating. And we're targeting to be the first company to receive a gold rating. In terms of some of the other carbon reduction initiatives that we've undertaken, you saw in the video, first successful trial of electric vehicle haul trucks, and we continue to increase the size of that fleet. Indonesia's largest solar project, which we're an off-taker, 250 megawatt peak plus 80 megawatt hours of battery energy storage. You would have seen in the presentation, off the back of that, we were actually one of only 2 mining companies from Indonesia invited to present at the COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai, which is where we took the opportunity to unveil our carbon targets. Just a little bit more on ESG and sustainability. I mentioned the University Scholarship Program. We've now successfully established a foundation, which actually is much harder than it sounds, because naturally a foreign organisation coming in and putting money into these sort of foundations is viewed as there may be some sort of political attempt to try and divert people's votes or views. But happy to say we've successfully established that foundation, and we've now had our first intake of 10 students. And when we get to with the program fully rolled out, that'll be 50 students annually that will be studying degrees ranging from engineering to accounting to law, and these are students that are from some of the poorer areas of Indonesia. Finally, the conservation area. We're also very proud of this. A lot of work went into identifying this area, a lot of studies of endemic flora and fauna, and so by being awarded this conservation area, it means that we're able to protect and maintain and nurture this area and use it as a place for research and also for education. Our operations are really underpinned by world-class nickel ore resources. Hengjaya Mine, that was our foundation asset, and we started back there in around 2009 with this mine. We have an 80% ownership. It's the closest large tonnage high grade to the industrial park, so it's of significant strategic importance. It has a JORC resource of 300 million tonnes at 1.2% nickel, so 3.6 million tonnes of contained nickel metal. And if you put that into perspective versus, say, a sulphide discovery, anything over 500,000 tonnes of contained nickel metal in the sulphide world would be considered a major discovery and world class. So you can get a feel for the size and scale of the nickel endowment in Indonesia just within our project alone. We're on track to sell 9 million tonnes of ore this year, and we're looking to ramp that up to 22 million tonnes by the end of 2025. Our September quarter EBITDA from the mine was US $37.5 million. These mines have a very low capital base. So to get this mine up and running to the point where it is today, about 70 million US in capex. We're doing close to 40 million US per quarter. So you can see a very rapid payback, very long mine life. This particular mine will supply our operations for the next 20 years plus. And in our RKEF and HPAL operations, nickel ore is one of our biggest costs. So it provides a natural hedge because nickel ore in Indonesia is actually priced against the LME nickel price. Moving over to the right, this is a new project acquisition. It's in close proximity to our existing Hengjaya mine and our existing operations. We've signed a CSPA for 3 continuous licences covering 6,654 hectares. In just a small area, we already have a resource there of 2.3 million tonnes of contained nickel metal. We're just in 900 hectares and there's about 4,700 hectares of prospective laterite. So within 20%, we're already at 2.3 million tonnes. So we're optimistic that this particular project might host somewhere around sort of 10 million tonnes of contained nickel metal, which would put it up amongst the top 5 known global nickel resources. Very attractive acquisition terms. We actually acquired it from our local partner who we've had a long-standing 15-year relationship with. The valuation was $2.50 per dry metric tonne for every 1.7% tonne nickel. What that means is that everything under 1.7% we're effectively getting for free, and our RKEF operations are actually running off grades of 1.5 to 1.6%, and our HPAL operations will run off grades from 1.1 to 1.3%. So where we currently sit with that project is an acquisition value of $43 US per tonne of contained nickel metal. If you look at the recent Indonesian peer average for mine acquisitions, that's about 141 US. The most recent Indonesian mine acquisition was done at 272. And if I come further back to some of the Australian acquisitions, they are actually priced at $900 and $2,100 per tonne US of contained nickel metal. So at $43 a tonne per contained nickel metal, you can see, very value accretive given the very low capex and the very quick payback, and the value that through our relationships that we have with our local partner that we're able to acquire these projects for. I mentioned the ESG track record of the Hengjaya mine. It really is a showpiece for the Indonesian government and for the industrial park. And so whenever an EV maker comes to Indonesia, we've had everyone from Tesla, Mercedes-Benz, Hyundai actually come through our mining operations just to see, what a well-run operation in Indonesia looks like. And the key for these guys is actually really 2. It's traceability. Where does the ore come from? How is it mined? Are the miners that are mining it responsibly? Are they meeting their rehabilitation requirements? And then in the case of HPAL, it's really the tailings management. How are tailings being stored and how are they being managed? Finally, just on the Sampala project, I mentioned it's in close proximity to existing operations. We actually only need to build a 20-kilometre haul road, which can tap into an existing 30-kilometre haul road. And so we're targeting sort of first ore production from these projects at the end of next year. This shows where we sit in terms of our resources portfolio. So you can see the Situasi project, which I haven't touched on, but that's a project in West Papua. We just recently announced a maiden JORC resource of 500,000 tonnes of contained nickel metal there. Again, to give you some idea of the sort of commercial arrangements that we're able to strike, that 500,000 tonnes was actually done through a $5 million Australian earn-in to get to 51%. We've got the Sampala project there. You can see 2.3 million tonnes, and then our Hengjaya mine with 3.6 million tonnes. So you can see the consolidated number there. Going back to Sampala, where we've only really tested 20% of the known laterite area, potential for possibly another 600 to 800 million dry metric tonnes of resources. So that moves us right along the right-hand side of that axis, basically, in excess of 1 billion tonnes of dry metric tonnes of nickel. So our aim is to continue to move that bubble over to the right-hand side of the chart and to continue to grow that bubble in size. So we started out our life as nickel pig iron producers, which only has one use for stainless steel, and we've now diversifying into the high pressure acid leach space. Reason for that is we see significantly higher margins in the HPAL space. So to give you some idea, nickel pig iron margins currently are around $2,000 to $3,000 a tonne. HPAL margins are around sort of $7,000 a tonne. And we've seen HPAL margins as high as $10,000 to $12,000 a tonne. So superior margins, significantly lower carbon intensity, and I'll touch on the carbon intensity later. And this diversifies our customer base from purely supplying Chinese stainless steel mills to now being able to supply global EV and battery makers. Our journey into HPAL started with the acquisition of 10% of the HNC HPAL. That was actually built during the COVID pandemic in less than 2 years and ramped up in less than 6 months. So it actually has the world record for the quickest build and the fastest ramp up of any HPAL globally. It has a nameplate capacity of 60,000 tonnes, but it's actually now producing around 80,000 tonnes. And I mentioned the fiscal incentives that are on offer from the Indonesian government. HNC has a tax holiday of 15 years at 0% tax, and then following on from that, an additional 2 years at 11%. So all of our processing operations have tax holidays ranging from 7 years up to 15 years. That's obviously freed up a significant amount of cash that we've been able to reinvest into the business, into growth, and has also meant that we've been able to balance that growth with being a material dividend payer. So, currently at sort of above a 5% dividend yield. Our journey into the transition into HPALs continues with the ENC HPAL there on the right. We have the rights to acquire a 55% interest. We're currently at 44% interest. So we have a remaining payment of US $253 million, which isn't due till the second half of next year, basically when the plant is commissioning. It will have a nameplate capacity of 72,000, but it's effectively a replica of HNC, only there are some improvements, and it's actually utilising the same team that built HNC. I mentioned commissioning expected mid-2025, the fact that it'll be the first HPAL globally to produce 3 of the key Class 1 and intermediary products. And it comes with something that's very unique that you really don't see in the resources market, is it comes with a CapEx guarantee, a nameplate guarantee and a timeframe guarantee. That's really what has allowed us to grow so rapidly. So we're now Australia's largest foreign investment into Indonesia. So I mentioned in the video, close to US $3 billion. We've actually surpassed the ANZ Bank in terms of investment in country. And really we've been able to do that off the back of these comprehensive set of guarantees. Every time we go to debt and equity markets, they know we're not going to come back in 9 months, 12 months, citing inflation, citing logistics issues, whatever. That every project has been delivered actually well ahead of time, and it operates well above nameplate capacity. So we're effectively shielded from any of those risks. And I'm sure all of us here in the mining space, we've all been in projects where we've had CapEx blowouts or time blowouts. It's challenging to build a project. If you look at what's actually happening in Indonesia, there's now a moratorium on the issue of any more RKEF permits that produce nickel pig iron. So that effectively puts a cap on any further nickel units coming out in the form of nickel pig iron, which we see as a strong positive, and means that then the only other type of investment that you can make is a high pressure acid leach. If you look at what's actually happening in country, you can see the operating plants there. You can see HNC at the top, in which we hold a 10% interest, and you can see 4 other operating HPALs within Indonesia. There's been a lot of announcements around planned projects and MOUs signed for projects and feasibility studies to be conducted on HPAL projects. But if you actually look at what is currently funded and actually under construction, there's actually only really 2 projects of any size and scale. That's ENC, which we have a 55% ownership in, and Blue Sparkling Energy, which is a project with our partners in a different industrial park. So you add the capacity up of ENC and Blue Sparkling Energy, and you come up with about 130,000 tonnes of new nickel capacity that is funded and should come online at the end of next year. You then overlay that with actually what's happened in global nickel markets, and you can see the extensive shuts or projects that have been placed on care and maintenance. And you can see at the very bottom there in the bold blue, that adds up to almost 500,000 tonnes of nickel metal that has come out of the market more recently. So, I think the bearish view of oversupply coming from Indonesia is a bit overdone, and we think that'll play out over the coming years, as I think, to the ENC H-Power, that's a $2.3 billion US investment. Easy word to say, much harder thing to finance. And so I think for many producers, that entry cost of capital will be inhibitive, other than for those such as ourselves, who already have a good track record with banks, with our mining performance, and with already established mature operations in nickel pig iron, which are generating strong EBITDA quarter on quarter. I mentioned the carbon intensity. So HNC was audited by an independent group out of Europe called SCAN, and the carbon intensity actually came out at around or just slightly below 7 tonnes of carbon per tonne of nickel. We actually compared that to the Australian peer average at the time, but most of those aren't around anymore, but the Australian peer average was 11.2. In fact, there was only one project, which was Nova, that was slightly less. So I think HNC came out at 6.97 tonnes of carbon, and Nova came out at about 6.3. So these next generation of H-Pals are some of the lowest carbon intensive in the world. And how do they achieve that? Innovations such as they have integrated captive sulfuric acid plants. And those sulfuric acid plants generate a significant amount of heat. That heat is converted into low carbon power, and power is basically about 60% of the H-Pal's power requirements. ENC has also been given the backing by Tsingshan to be really a global showpiece, not just for nickel production, but also for worker standards. So there is a plan, which you can see in that middle top photo there, to build accommodation for the 4,000 to 5,000 workers that will work at the ENC H-Power. It'll be all new, modern, state-of-the-art apartments, all full Wi-Fi. There'll be sports fields. There's about 27 chains of restaurants, and that's burger restaurants and Chinese restaurants, Thai, all sorts of different food. It'll be everything will be electric within that particular precinct, and so we think that ENC will be a global showpiece for, as I mentioned, not just for responsible low carbon nickel production, but also for workers' accommodation and standards. Where do we sit today in terms of nickel producers? You can see where we sit currently, and then where we'll move to when ENC comes online in the second half of next year. That will, as I mentioned, make us the largest, and we already are the largest listed pure diversified nickel producer. But if you look further to the left on that chart, you've got Norilsk, Russian and sanctioned, and then the remaining three are all Chinese. So again, if you're looking for nickel exposure with a Western company, ASX listed, obviously comes with all of the corporate governance, then there's really only anyone of scale that is a pure nickel producer at this point in time. And I mean, if you look, we IPO'd in 2018, and back then we actually had no nickel metal production. So in under 6 years, or a little over 6 years, we will grow to being the largest nickel producer globally. If you take a look at BHP, right back down there on the right-hand side, they've been operating in Leinster since 1967. So it's been a rapid ascent, and some of the reasons for that I've touched on earlier. It's an exciting period for the company in terms of growth, because most of our future growth is already fully funded. So there's no need for us to come back to the market. And what does that mean for us? 2023, our EBITDA was a little over US $400 million. Our target is to be in excess of US $1 billion in EBITDA in the next 2 to 3 years. And how do we achieve that? Obviously with ENC commissioning at the second half of next year and then ramping up. Depending on what margins you use, that will add close to 400 to 500 million US of additional EBITDA. We then have the Sampala mine, which I mentioned, and that again probably another 100, 150, similar to a ramp up at our Hengjaya mine, another 150 million. So that number already takes you well in excess of US 1 billion. But if you look at what the capex that's needed to still be spent to get to that number of US 1 billion or beyond, it's 353 million US, which, as I said, based on current cash and EBITDA earnings on a quarterly basis, is we're fully funded for that growth, which is set to come online over the next 2 to 3 years. So look, in summary, it has been a long journey. I think people only know us for our listed life, which I mentioned has only been 6 years, and since the IPO, we've grown very rapidly. But I think we've been in Indonesia since 2008. We've got the scars to prove it. We were there during an export ban, which nearly shut the whole company down. We were basically in debt. We actually, funny or not so funny story, we ended up taking a US $9 million loan from our local minority partner, and it turns out he actually borrowed the money from his mother-in-law. And so I used to get messages every week, mate, when's that money coming? My mother-in-law's going to kill me. But I think that just highlights, it's perseverance. It's a bit of good luck, but it's also, the people that you work with and the partnerships that you form. I don't think there'd be many countries in the world where you would find a minority partner willing to stump up, and that was unsecured as well. Stump up that sort of money to keep the company going. He believed in us, he believed in the vision, and I'm happy to say today that we're at the point where we hoped we'd be. We just didn't think it would take sort of 15 or 16 years. But look, with that, thank you again, and happy to sort of answer any questions.
Thanks, mate.
What a story, hey? We do have time for some questions, and while there'll be Isabella is there, I've got 3 questions there with Keith. Yeah. Far away, Keith.
Just 2 simple questions.
2? Wow.
First up, seeing you paying a dividends around about a total of 5 cents a year, what's your actual dividend policy? And secondly, why is Indonesia curtailing its production and not installing more plants, companies, etc.?
Good question.
Yeah, so we did more recently put out our dividend framework, which is 30 to 60% of free cash flow, obviously after taking into account any debt or any funding requirements. But we did pay a final dividend of 2.5 cents. So last year our total dividend was 4.5 cents Australian. And then in relation to the second question, look, we are still seeing growth in Indonesia from foreign investors, and the Indonesian government is doing a lot to try and woo more foreign investors to come in. As I mentioned, it's predominantly been Chinese investment to date. I, for example, was actually in Washington about 3 or 4 months ago, and we had a meeting, look, the Indonesian government and US government are very closely looking at a critical minerals agreement between the 2 countries. I think they recognise that for their EVs to be cost competitive, they need to be ensuring that they can source nickel at the lowest cost globally. So, look, I think the government has done a lot of good things to encourage that investment, and we are seeing it. But again, To find a good nickel mine in Indonesia is challenging. You do need to know your way around the landscape. And again, really, HPAL investment is the only type of refining opportunity that's available at the moment. And again, I think the capex associated with that, and also given there's limited expertise that can actually roll out these HPAL plants. So I think that's probably another key area, which is why, you know, we're very happy with the ENC project in that we've secured the same team that already has a track record. So, you know, part of the reason we took 10% in HNC was, you know, we can take investors to an operating HPAL, because I'm sure, as you know, in the West, it's been a long history of failures and capex blowouts and heartache.
Just while, if there is another question coming, one in the interim, the tax holiday and gentle ratchet up, very gentle, is that done by a declared special economic zone around an area, or by the operation, or by the company, or what's its basis? Is it a special economic zone?
Yeah, good question. No, it is a special economic zone, and the tax holiday ranges from 7 to 15 years, and that's just governed by the size of the investment.
Yeah, that's a really interesting answer, because if you were to guess how many special economic zones there were in the world, you might think, what, 200 or 300, I suppose. There are 8,000 special economic zones in the world. There are 0 in Australia, unless you know, leaving aside Tasmania. But 8,000 in the world and none in Australia. It would be very easy for our governments to start using this tool. We've done a lot of research on it. If anybody would like to know more about special economic zones and how they could and should be applied in Australia, you can see the kind of real incentive that it creates, and look at the extraordinary explosion of activity and people who've been attracted to that area. In Australia, we have very anal Treasury folks who, as soon as you mention anything that involves a reduction in taxes, they read reduction in revenue, overlooking the fact that it will actually dramatically increase revenue if you use these things. And what better case example than you've given. Have we got another question around the room? There's one down the back over here. Oh, I've got one over here. Yep.
Oh, hi, Malcolm McComas. Great presentation. Thank you very much. Could you just give us a bit of a layman's view on currency controls, money in and money out of Indonesia, given that a lot of money's gone in?
Yeah. Thanks, Malcolm. Look, in terms of currency controls, we've had no issues with the transfer of funds in and out of the country. We do have Singapore holding companies interposed in between the Indonesian and Australian companies. I think we were a very early dividend payer, and the reason for that was that we wanted to allay the fears of shareholders of money being trapped in Indonesia and not being able to be flowed back to the parent company. So, look, in terms of money flows, absolutely no issues.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, try Papua New Guinea in comparison. Yeah, we had another one back here. Yep.
Just on the performance of your HNC project, you're up 80,000 tonnes per annum. I think that's a 30% beat on nameplate. Any particular drivers that's delivered that for you, and any read-through then into how we think about what your steady state might be out of ENC?
Yeah, typically these guys sort of aim to perform above nameplate, and we see historically it is 30% above nameplate. So some of that does come about through high grading in the early years of the life of the operation. For example, our RKEF kilns in the early days were processing 1.8% nickel. They're now doing sort of more like 1.5 to 1.6 now that they're paid back and they're stable. And it's sort of similar in HPALs. The early feed grades are around 1.3%, and that will decrease to around sort of 1.1% as they're mature and more stable. So, but look, the over delivery and the execution has, you know, they haven't missed a project yet. And one of the questions we get consistently is, what have they done so differently to everyone else in the West where HPALs have failed? And it's interesting, their answer is we basically went back and simplified everything. So I think a lot of the HPALs that were attempted in the West were significantly over-engineered by people trying to, you know, squeak out an extra 0.5% or 0.2 bips or whatever of additional recovery. It very much went back to basics, but also there's this sort of conception that it's all this Chinese black box technology. In fact, all they do is they're taking the best of breed technology from countries like Germany, the US, the Netherlands. Some of it even comes from Australia, and basically putting it all together. So, you know, the HPALs that you see now, or the new generation HPALs that you see in Indonesia, are sort of delivering what HPALs were intended to do when people first started playing with them in the sort of 60s and 70s. Yeah.
How interesting! You're reading my question, weren't you? It is an amazing development. HPAL was always a ghost ship. It was very difficult to operate. Koniambo, the one in Madagascar. So many examples of high pressure acid leach going sideways. And I was deeply curious as to, and what a great answer. They've trimmed it down, they've simplified it, they've thought it through, and they haven't relied on consultants, outside engineering firms. They do it all in-house, correct? Mm-hmm. And keep it simple. Of course, the great Hulk sitting in our landscape at Murrin took 12 years to reach nameplate. Yes, pioneering, you could regard it as pioneering, but there was certainly a lot of very silly engineering ideas that lasted 3 days, and then that shut down and rebuild all over again. So trying to build too much complexity into it. But the other interesting thing, just we were talking about it earlier, was with HPAL, sulphur is imported. Sulphur needs to be burnt to make SO2 for acid. And there's a massive 60% of the energy for the plant actually comes out of the burning of the sulphur, which makes it such a low carbon process. Yeah, there you go. I was listening. So, Philip Hellman.
Oh, thank you for a great presentation. I must admit I got a bit lost amongst the acronyms, but there was a lovely slide of your limenitic ore sitting over your saprolitic ore. How is the saprolite processed differently from the limonite that's overlying it? Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sean. Good question. So the first wave of investment in Indonesia was in rotary kiln electric furnaces, which is a pyrometallurgical process. So it uses heat to basically convert nickel into nickel pig iron. Very energy intensive and basically powered by coal-fired power. That's why the government has put the moratorium on any further RKEF. The HPAL process uses the limonite ore, which actually sits on top of the saprolite ore, is a much lower grade ore, so significantly lower in value, but actually produces a significantly higher value product and a diversified product. So as you saw, you know, from limonite ore, we can get MHP, we can get nickel and cobalt sulfate, we can get nickel cathode. We also recover some chrome, and there's some other smaller elements that we can recover as well. So I think the Indonesian government has made the right decision. In mining, historically what's happened is to get to the high-grade saprolite, a lot of that limonite has actually been sterilised. So I think now that's why the government has said, let's start at the top with the limonite and with the high-pressure acid leach, which higher margin, lower carbon intensity, and you know, a more diversified product output as well.
One more just interesting point of interest from my point of view is in that complex, how much Indonesia's got a wealth of coal, lower grade than ours, but plenty of it cheaply had. How much power is being generated through coal firing?
Yes, so within IMIP, there's in excess of about 5 gigawatt of power that is coal-fired power. Again, the industrial park has made a commitment to the Indonesian government that and then there'll be no more new licences issued for any more coal-fired power. And so Tsingshan has made a commitment for around 2 to 3 gigs of solar. And so we're actually the first project that's kicking that off of any scale, and that's 250 megawatt. But the plan is for 2 to 3 gigawatt. And also looking at other clean or renewable sources such as wind and hydro. And I think what you'll probably see too in a few years as some of these coal-fired power plants start to get a little long in the tooth is that they'll probably be converted to gas-fired power. And Indonesia does have its own gas fields that it could certainly supply into.
Okay, we've satisfied the curiosity out there. I've actually got a little present for you. And Isabella, would you like to just come up here? Somebody I'd like to introduce who's going to be helping us a lot going forward, Isabella Ma. I also want to thank Lelda Smits and Julia Maguire for your efforts in membership. So thank you, ladies, and bringing this show on. Come up, say hello, not being shy. Yeah, please meet Isabella. She's going to be anything you need. There you go, look at that. Why don't I ever get one of those? But anyway, Jeffries works with Isabella at TGB in the mornings, and it's great to have you aboard. And so if you have any questions about anything in the operations and how things are done, this is our handy helmsman here. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, present time. Members will be familiar with this, but this is our standard gift. It is a beautiful real replica of our own replica of the Eureka flag. It is made from all-weather material of the highest quality, the durable stuff that you can leave it up there for years and it doesn't fade, the really good stuff. And the nice man insisted that the zinc clips here were made from Australian zinc, if you believe that. But anyway, it's certainly it's not as I always emphasise, it's not a flag of the CFMEU or of any redneck. It is the flag of the miners of Australia and the people of Australia, in my view. A very strong message in its foundations about how government should treat its population. So it's on behalf of all of our members that I'd just like to present you with this special little baby, Flight with Pride. We're up there in Indonesia, and put your hands together and please thank Jackie. So next month we have Linus. So Amanda Lacaze is coming. Amanda is finally coming. She stood us up once before, and but this time Will has confirmed that she's coming. So that's another huge story and another, what a journey that's been. But so that'll be our Christmas event, and really fantastic roundup. Listen, one thing just on membership, a lot of people sort of seem to forget how it works. You go on the website, it says membership, there's no charge, you add your email address and you get the flyers, and thereafter you are a life member. I mean, it's not very challenging, is it? But a lot of people drop off and then ask me why they're not getting the flyers. And they've changed companies and email addresses. It's a pretty simple game. Please encourage all of your colleagues in your company, just get on the list, know what's on, come here. We put a lot of effort into these shows, and what a great turnout we've had today. So work on the memberships yourselves. It's your club. I just work here, so do that for yourselves, and we'll look forward to seeing you in December. Thank you.